Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of The Fishing Teacher, and appreciate you guys swinging by the channel and checking today's episode out. Guys, we want to talk about today about how fish don't read books, they don't watch YouTube videos, they have a complete mind of their own. And I want to give you guys some good examples about some common preconceived notions and myths about bass fishing that simply aren't true. So we're going to dig into that in today's video, and I think it's going to sort of open up a different perspective of you guys to, approach your fishing moving forward here. Also, guys, just real quick, thank you big time, guys, for everybody who's taking time to hit that subscribe button here to The Fishing Teacher. Really appreciate that. Everybody out there that's been subscribing and liking the videos and hyping the videos, that's really going a long way to support the Fishing Teacher here. Much appreciated. And also, guys, thank you very much, man. Everybody the last year that's been using and bookmarking my tackle warehouse link to purchase your fishing tackle, thank you very much for that. If you want to do one thing that'll really help the channel out, just go into any of my video descriptions here on The Fishing Teacher and just order your tackle or rod and reel or whatever through that tackle warehouse link, and the channel gets a small percentage of a commission on that, so appreciate that. Okay, one of the things that I have seen about bass fishing in a big way is the fact that there's always exceptions to the rule, and the fish are always doing something that doesn't make any sense, that goes against what you think they should do. For example, let's say for example you're fishing muddy water. Common knowledge and the common way of thinking is that if you're fishing muddy water, you've got to fish a lure that puts out some vibration or a lot of flash, or is a little bit brighter, or just a little bit more noisier for the fish to find in that muddy water. I've seen situations, guys, where I have caught fish, and I've seen fish caught on translucent looking lures that were quiet in muddy water, so that sort of blows that entire myth out of the water. On the other side of the spectrum, if you're fishing real gin clear water, a lot of times you think that the green pumpkins and watermelons are going to be good in a clear water situation. I've seen times where they bite a bright pearl colored or a bright chartreuse colored in a gin clear water. So there's always exceptions to the rule with that, and where fish live and how they bite. Another misconception is people think if the water's really cold, that the fish, since they're cold-blooded, they're going to be really lethargic and move slow. I've been in several situations, guys, where the water temperature was in the low 40s, and I was fishing a jerkbait, and they wanted the jerkbait worked really fast in cold water. I've seen that several different times. So the point is you can go out and you can start and formulate a game plan based upon what is considered the traditional, approach to fishing, whether it be the lure colors or the type of areas or how you're working a bait or something like that. But ultimately, you have got to listen to the fish day in and day out to see what they want in that particular day, because bass are a very complex creature, and we don't understand everything about them, and we don't want to understand everything about them, because that would take all the fun out of it. But the thing that I have found out about bass fishing is that every single day that you're on the water, the fish behave a little bit differently. Now, what is it that causes that? What are the factors that determine that? I think there's quite a few of them. I think that fishing pressure and noise decibel levels have a big part of it. This can inactivate a fish. It can cause them to prefer different lure categories. If you've got more outboard motor noise or trolling motor noise or electronic pings, that can affect fish. And if you don't have that, that can also affect them. The type of sunlight conditions or the light intensity, right now it's really dark and raining, and you have so many different layers of light intensity. You have thick overcast, you got wispy overcast, you got overcast where the light intensity is brighter than other times. The conditions are different all the time in terms of light intensity, because the angle of the sun is changing all the time. So not only does the sky conditions, as far as the cloud, cover or lack of cloud cover, determine it, but the angle of the sun determines it. And this goes along with water levels, water clarity in correlation with water temperature. There's a huge list of variables that determine this, and every single one of these, it causes the bass to behave differently and act differently. And a lot of times when these factors come together, it just doesn't make any rhyme or reason why a fish is in a certain place or why they're not in a certain place. And one of the things that I have learned about bass fishing more than anything else is that you've got to be able to start somewhere. In other words, you can't just go out and like, man, I don't have a clue what to do. These fish could be doing anything. I'm intimidated. Where do I start? You've got to have some type of a game plan and a foundation. So when you go out fishing, you know, you may want to fish a jig one day, you crankbait, a topwater, or whatever. You've got to be able to at least have some rods rigged up to start. But the most important thing to remember is what we're talking about in the video here, is that a lot of times, in fact more than not, you're going to have to make some type of an adjustment on the water. You're going to have to change your lure color, your lure size, your lure profile, your speed to retrieve. All that stuff is going to change on a day-to-day basis, and the only way that you know if it's working or not is how many fish you're catching. So this is just one of the things that you're going to have to accept in bass fishing that, you know, happens every single time. I mean, the prime example, let me give you a little quick example here. What happened to me at that tournament at Truman Lake this weekend, you know, where I finished 5th up there. I love to flip. You know, the water at Truman Lake was in the bushes. It was a perfect situation for flipping. And I have spent my life for the past 50 years trying to master the art of flipping. And what I have learned about flipping, when you have the conditions like we had this weekend at Truman Lake, I usually catch a lot of bass on either like a 3/8 ounce jig, which is a little bit lighter, or like soft plastics with like a 3/16 or a 1/4 ounce sinker. That's my go-to size. I feel that the fall rate with those type of weights are very attractive to the bass. And to make a long story short, guys, they would not touch it this week at Truman Lake. And through experimentation, I had to go to a 3/4 ounce sinker on my soft plastics to get a bite, and that's what they wanted. I wound up catching 16 pounds in the tournament on a 3/4 ounce sinker, and I never normally would have done that. But here's the thing about it. It's like the conditions at Truman Lake, like any other lake that you fish out there, it was a combination of the water visibility, the water temperature, the water level, the type of cover that was in there, how much water was in the cover, proximity to how long after the spawn this particular tournament was, weather conditions, weather patterns. It was a combination of all that, and for whatever reason, these bass wanted a fast fall. So, which doesn't make any sense. That's the whole point of this video. It's like, you know, you have something, you have an idea in your mind how these fish should bite, and then wind up doing something totally opposite. So, like I said, if it sounds complicated and a little bit complex, it is. I mean, because bass fishing is a complicated, complex sport. And let me give you one little other thing, just a random thought off the top of my head about Truman Lake. Truman Lake, the water visibility was like 6 or 8 inches of visibility, right? And these bushes were really thick, and the water was dirty, and there was a lot of shad on the outside of these bushes, a lot of shad. So I always thought that maybe I could run a crankbait or spinnerbait down the sides of those bushes because the water was dirty and there's a lot of bait fish around the outside of those bushes and catch fish. I couldn't catch any. I could catch some fish on a jig or a soft plastic, throwing it around the outside of the bushes a little bit, but I couldn't get them to hit anything that resembled a shad, which doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So join the crowd, man. If you get frustrated and can't figure it out and nothing makes sense in bass fishing, just join the crowd, because you're not alone with that. But just keep an open mind, guys. Experiment, use your creativity, use your imagination. That's what makes bass fishing fun. And more than not, you're gonna stumble on something if you just keep experimenting long enough. So anyway, I hope it helps out, guys. We'll talk later.